Hello.
Our story begins inside of Yoda's meditation chambers. He woke up from his sleep in a cold sweat. His eyes darted around the room and then back to the window, which was hidden behind some blinds. He used the Force to open them so he could see the city outside. He fell back to his bed. Yoda felt chills roll down his spine. It was like he was hit with a wave of night terrors, though he wasn't experiencing the visions that young Skywalker was experiencing across the city. The Elder Jedi Master got up and walked around the room, his mind thinking about the end of the war, and how close it was to coming. He then considered, if everything was going so well, something had to be awry. This night terror was a repeat of his vision from before, his fight with Sidious, sacrifice, and Sidious transforming into nothingness. Yoda considered the idea that if this Sith Lord was so elusive, then perhaps it was time to consider that not everything was as it seems. The council was spread out, and the Jedi were in a fragile position. He remembered what Kenobi said at the beginning of the war, about Dooku's claim that the Sith controlled everything. Dooku was dead now. There'd be no way to question if that was true or not. Yoda stopped, and thought momentarily. Perhaps it was time the Jedi stopped biting the bait. Maybe that was the key to this. Yoda was unsure though. It seemed like the right move to make. Each of the most successful Jedi in the Order were fighting on some of the most important battlefronts across the galaxy right now. It didn't initially seem like a Sith plan to spread the Jedi out, but the Battle of Coruscant came. They won, and the Separatists looked weak. Once Grievous was discovered, another Jedi or two would go to fight him. The Battle of Kashyyyk would happen within weeks or days, and there was no guarantee the war would be over before it came, so that meant that another 1 or 2 Jedi Masters would be sent there. Yoda sat down and stopped. He was overthinking everything. The night terror mixed with the stress of the war was eating him up. As Grand Master, it was his burden to bear. He was the one that needed to make the difficult decisions. His eyes closed, and he pondered what he would do to make sure the Order did not fall victim to the forces of evil. In the morning, Yoda would have a meeting with young Skywalker, an individual who wanted to know how to save others from death. But that's not what he said. The Grand Master answered Anakin's actual questions regarding premonitions in the Force, visions of pain, suffering, and death about someone close to him. As an individual who experienced pain, suffering, and death over the span of his last several hundred years of life, Yoda gave to Skywalker sincere and strong advice. What had helped Yoda with handling the death of his first teacher, to the death of his first student. These same exercises had been used when these travesties occurred across the galaxy, or when his last student turned to the dark side. Yoda was very careful with his words, and he told Anakin to train himself to let go of everything he feared to lose. Death was natural. It wasn't something that could be controlled. While Yoda believed the meeting was successful, Anakin didn't. He was looking for answers to questions he never asked the Grand Master. Now his concerns drifted. Perhaps there was another way to handle these visions. Following the meeting, Yoda would return to the Garden of the Temple to meditate, while Skywalker was gaslit and manipulated by the Chancellor of the Republic. Yoda's meditations were becoming increasingly difficult. He was struggling because the Force was out of balance, and his nightmares had been plaguing his mind for months. As Grand Master, the Order was his responsibility. The war was his burden, and as Grand Master, he needed to look after 10,000 Jedi, a galaxy at war, and a struggle that swallowed balance whole. In the following hours, Anakin would be given the seat inside the council chambers, and he would soon be assigned to his mission, one not meant to go into the records of the High Council. Following Anakin being told to take a seat, Master Ki-Adi-Mundi brought up an important point, one relating to the key system of Kashyyyk. Yoda thought back to the night before. He knew that they would discuss this battle today, and he almost jumped at the idea of going, but he suggested that another Jedi Master go and fight for the planet, with Master Luminar on duty. May spoke up, suggesting that his unit would be ready for battle. They had success at Anaxis not too long before, so Kashyyyk shouldn't be any problem for them to handle. It was decided, and the council was adjourned. Later on, Kenobi would inform Mace and Yoda about Anakin's reaction to the mission. Mace wasn't trusting of the situation. Anakin and Palpatine had a long history of standing by each other's side. It didn't matter what the Jedi did. Anakin would likely take favor with Palpatine at this point. Mace was distrusting of Anakin, but hopeful that he would do right by the Force and the Jedi, but still, having had no reason to trust Anakin. Kenobi tried to balance out the conversation by suggesting that Anakin hadn't ever let him down, and he wouldn't hear him. The 3 Jedi landed and Mace walked off, meeting with the chieftain of the Wookiees and his clone commander before going off to battle at Kashyyyk. Yoda and Obi-Wan returned to the temple. and the Grand Master returned back to the garden. He said something on the LA-18, something that may have been too far, but maybe not far enough. He said that the prophecy may have been misread. He didn't want to think that young Skywalker would betray the Jedi Order, but at this point, the Force was so clouded, how could he not assume that he would? As these thoughts continued circulating, Yoda decided that he wanted to ask Anakin about his visions, to see if he could get some more information. He wasn't sure if this was something he should do or not, but Yoda was optimistic that they could have a productive conversation even after their previous talk and the mission assignment. As Yoda walked through the halls of the Jedi Temple, he continued thinking. It was uncommon for him to spend so much time in his head, but he almost couldn't help it. This was one of the main reasons why his thoughts were so frequently misconstrued. That, and of course, the mystery of the elusive Sith Lord. When he got to Skywalker's room, he rang it, and waited. After about a minute of waiting, he rang it again, and nothing came of it. How odd. Yoda decided that he would wander the halls until finding Anakin. He wouldn't. Skywalker was sleeping in Padme's residence after going to the opera house with Palpatine. Eventually Yoda did go to sleep, but the fact that Anakin never showed up was weird. Yoda did ask around too, but no one had seen him. When the next day began, Anakin was back inside the temple and acting as if he had been there all night. Yoda was inside of a small pod, floating through the corridors. He was inside the Great Hall on a catwalk, overlooking the entrance of the temple. The sun was filling the chambers of the Jedi and his eyes were closed. Anakin happened to be walking by when he came across Yoda. The Grand Master said his name as he walked by and he stopped. Yoda asked where he was last night and he told the truth, informing him that the Chancellor invited him to the opera house. Skywalker was a little nervous, hoping that Yoda wouldn't delve too far into it, but that's what happened. Yoda turned the pod around and asked young Skywalker if he would like to speak about it. Anakin nodded his head without saying a word. He didn't want to, but he couldn't really say no, could he? The two of them made their way to the garden, so that they could have some privacy during their conversation. Anakin was surprised Yoda didn't choose the council chambers, but perhaps it was better to feel the sunlight rather than be surrounded by the stiffness of the council chambers themselves. When they got there, Yoda got off the pod and told Anakin to speak away. Anakin stumbled over his words, telling Yoda that Palpatine had stories to tell and they were all pretty mundane. Yoda could feel it, like Palpatine was trying to do something to Anakin. Skywalker had a unique speaking pattern, everyone did. Anakin was Obi-Wan's student, who was Qui-Gon's student, who was Dooku's student, and of course, that all led back to Yoda. Within these speaking patterns, there are elements of those who came before them. Yoda listened, he always did. So, he noticed that Anakin wasn't acting like himself. Yoda let Anakin talk away, and tell him about the show and how Palpatine dismissed his guards and his posse, and how it was just the two of them. It was really a peaceful night at the opera. Oh, and also, Palpatine's scouts found General Grievous on Utapau. Yoda looked up at Anakin and asked if there was something he was afraid to say. Unlike Palpatine, Yoda wouldn't force it, he would simply ask. For Anakin, this was a lot easier to handle and even reject, but it still didn't help. He folded immediately with Palpatine, because he told Anakin what it was that Anakin was doing. With Yoda, he alluded to knowing. This to Anakin immediately set off alarms in his head. If Yoda and Palpatine could both expose him so quickly, then maybe Palpatine wasn't who he said he was. Yoda could see this happen before his eyes, and so he asked Anakin if Palpatine promised him something that seemed impossible. Anakin looked to the tree and nodded his head. He told Yoda that Palpatine told him of an old Sith legend. Yoda asked to hear it, and when it was told from what Anakin understood, Yoda told the boy that this was not an old legend, nor was it true. It was a story of how Palpatine was able to overthrow his own instructor, and the truth was, darkness does not create, it destroys. The Sith take life, so if one was to create or save it, they would lose or destroy something else in the process. Skywalker asked how the notion of the Sith being Palpatine's instructor could be true, and Yoda, despite playing by a hunch, was able to figure out that Plagueis was not ancient. The Bane era of Sith was full of unknown names, individuals not recorded within the archives of the Jedi Temple. Yoda, being nearly 900 years old, had been to their homeworlds. He spoke with Bane himself. He knew their legends. Plagueis was either a generation or two removed from the most recent Sith Lord, and being that Dooku was killed, it seemed that Plagueis was the one who came before Sidious. There were obviously ways that this could be misinterpreted, but Yoda was adamant that this was the truth. All of this was his own interpretation. Anakin didn't understand. He didn't want to hurt his friend. Yoda applauded Skywalker for his resilience, because it wasn't his fault. Palpatine picked him because he was the golden boy. Palpatine prodded at him because he wasn't raised from birth as a Jedi. Yoda admitted that there were fallacies in their instruction of him, but they taught him as they taught every Jedi. The missing ingredient, the one the Council had neglected to see, was the fact that there was something in his ear telling him the entire time that the Jedi were wrong. Anakin looked down, trying to understand. Yoda looked from the tree up towards Skywalker. He admitted that the Council hadn't ever been perfect. They allowed a Sith Lord to become Chancellor. They lost a member to the Sith, one who became a leader of the opposition. They allowed the Grand Army to be created under their noses. They didn't see that Palpatine was the reason Anakin was so distrusting. There were mistakes in Anakin's Jedi life, but none greater than allowing Palpatine to have any sort of influence. Without Palpatine telling him he'd be the greatest Jedi of all, his ego wouldn't have grown to such extent. Without Palpatine telling him that the Jedi were liars or frauds or whatever twisted truth the Sith had, Anakin would be a passionate Jedi. Yoda spoke aloud after reflecting on all of their mistakes, trials, and even triumphs. He told young Skywalker that many times the Council, and even himself, acted for Anakin's benefit. He asked the Grand Master what he meant. Yoda looked up and told him that Ahsoka was his. That was done for Anakin. Many other times Yoda had gone out of his way to do what he wouldn't have done for anyone else, and maybe he shouldn't have. Maybe he should have asked, and so that's what Yoda did, telling Anakin that he completed his mission. He learned the truth about Darth Sidious. So, being that this was his mission, what did he want to do about it? Anakin's mind raced. It felt like a trap. It wasn't, but that didn't change what it felt like. Yoda gave him a choice, the choice to be a Jedi Master, essentially. Anakin saw the potential here. If Yoda was willing to trust him, then maybe he could earn that rank of Master and then access the archives. He could save Padme. His mind then went to the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and what Yoda said in response to that story. Part of Anakin wanted to appease Yoda, hoping that he could receive some rank of Master. He asked Yoda if the two of them, together as one, could face Palpatine. Yoda nodded his head. This brought him back to his vision and his nightmares. They would need to be successful here. Yoda and Skywalker would depart from the temple in the early hours of the morning. The two Jedi moved through the halls of the executive building together. Anakin kept looking to Yoda, who only continued to give him reassuring looks. Together, they would do this. They walked into the Chancellor's office. Palpatine was in there by himself. He looked up and asked the two Jedi what he could do for them. It was such a pleasure to see two esteemed members of the Jedi Order visiting him so early in the morning. Without a second passing, Palpatine knew Skywalker ratted him out. He was running through plans on how to operate this. He told the Jedi that he needed to grab something from the other room, asking if they could be kind enough to be patient for him. They looked to each other as Palpatine scurried away. Anakin got down to Yoda's level and whispered to him, asking what they should do. Yoda was surprised Palpatine ran. He was coming up with his own plan on how to respond to that. He told Anakin to lock the doors, so Skywalker ran over and did it. When he got back, Yoda had his lightsaber in his hands, and Anakin copied it. They moved quickly. Palpatine's door was shut, so they assumed he was making a retreat. Instead, the doors opened and they heard execute Order 42, 66, 111, and 134. Two lightsabers ignited as Yoda demanded he stop. Palpatine turned with a sinister grin as he turned the communication device off. His job was really simple now. Stall. The two Jedi moved forward and Sidious slid between their strikes, not even igniting his lightsabers, and using the Force to throw Yoda into the console before focusing on Anakin. He swung ruthlessly, trying to hit his former mentor, but Palpatine avoided, using his skills to swiftly avoid everything. He pulled at Anakin, telling him to go deeper into the dark side, execute him like he did Dooku, slaughter him like he did the Tuscans, be filled with rage, let it consume his every move. It was so easy, right? Then he could have his revenge. Yoda heard all of this as he launched himself across the room, forcing Sidious to ignite his two lightsabers. He blocked the strike before sliding back and giving him some space. Palpatine mocked them, telling them that they never saw it. He then looked to Anakin, dead in the eyes, as he told him he should have joined the Sith. He'd learn what it meant to be a Jedi real soon, and that meant lose. Skywalker raged, swinging forward. Palpatine didn't have to make this fight go on any longer, but he would. The duel was ferocious, and while Yoda was a magnificent opponent, Sidious was just buying time. He didn't use all of his energy, and he was only playing defensive moves. This didn't mean the Jedi didn't get close to killing him. They did, a number of times, which is why this was a risk on his part. But he knew he could draw this out. Midway through the fight, Yoda stopped. He felt his head. The darkness was so apparent and strong. What had happened? Anakin was so focused on killing Palpatine that it didn't click. He bashed his blade against Palpatine's before he used one blade to swing below Anakin, which Anakin jumped over before being electrocuted and thrown to Yoda's side. Sidious told the two Jedi that it was time for them to see their greatest failure. He turned and cut an X across the window and jumped out. There was a craft waiting for him below, and he used it to get out of dodge. Before Skywalker could chase, he felt a terrible pain in his chest, and then they heard a commotion. Without their lightsabers slamming away at Palpatine was finally audible. Though that wasn't the end of it. Anakin got a communication from Obi-Wan, as Yoda got one from Sindralik. Both messages eerily similar. Retreat from Coruscant. The temple was lost. The two Jedi looked at each other as they ran to the door to see what was happening, and when they opened it up, horror filled their eyes. The Coruscant Guard was moving through the executive building. Their blasters were set to kill, and they were shooting everyone. Senate guards, representatives, senators, it didn't matter. They were taking over. Skywalker prepared to charge in, but Yoda stopped him. Anakin didn't care. He told Yoda he needed to save Padme before running out into the chaos of battle. Yoda watched Anakin throw some clones into pillars before they moved to surround him. Yoda moved in to assist. Across the city, the 212th and 501st entered the temple. They did an airborne attack. Without marching directly into the temple, there were bombs being dropped on it, with LAATs shooting at Jedi coming out on foot. Of course, these gunships dropped off thousands of men before encircling the temple. The center of it was bombed, and once the troopers entered it, they turned the temple into a no-fly zone. The only escape was through the bottom of the temple. It was initially a successful defense. Kenobi, Sindralik, Saesee Tiin, Agan Kolar, Fisto, Shaak Ti, and Coleman Kaj were defending the temple, but slowly their numbers dwindled. The temple guard had a traitor who was killed by Sindralik, but because there were two divisions of clones and bombs hitting the temple with LAAT cover, the Jedi were rushing to defend their young. That perhaps was the biggest flaw in the defense. The temple guards and council members did the most they could, but it was a blindsiding attack from two of the most elite divisions in the Grand Army. At another location in the city, the Senate building, the senators had a much worse fate. Commander Fox led an assault into the main chambers of the Senate building, and they had one objective, well technically two, but the main one was dealing with all Republic government personnel. It was a slaughter. None of the senators' guards or Senate guards could stand up to the Coruscant Guard. Despite them being assigned to Coruscant for the duration of the war, they were still clones. It was horrid. Not far from the Senate building, Skywalker and Yoda were retreating. They may have cut through a majority of the Coruscant guardsmen, but they are being overrun, especially near the landing platforms because air support as well as heavy artillery was landed. ATTEs, ATRTs, and ATAPs were situated across the landing platform, just to make sure there wouldn't be any escape. Yoda also made it clear that they needed to defend the survivors and get them out of here, which was true. The full day was chaos. Palpatine vanished into the shadows, his plans in operation. He knew what he was doing and played everything very carefully, as well as ordering Grievous to execute the Separatist leaders, sparing Newt Gunray. Grievous took honor in this, which is why Gunray was contacted after he watched all of his allies die. His next order was to go to Mustafar and turn off all the battle droids. Grievous was a loose cannon. Sidious did two brilliant things. He made sure the Separatist leadership was crippled, and then he turned the survivor against his own movement. Truly brilliant. Now Grievous would be left with no military and no support. He was as expendable as it was. Palpatine retreated to his abode on the far side of Coruscant before flying back to Morabon, where he would continue his plans. As night fell in the city, Skywalker moved to the Senate building with Yoda. The order had been accounted for by the survivors: Saesee Tiin, Obi-Wan, Kit Fisto, and Shaak Ti. There were close to 700 survivors from the temple. Who knew how many others were in the galaxy? They were regrouping on Ossus. It should be a safe place for them there. A transmission was sent galaxy-wide before the temple crumbled. As the two Jedi avoided detection from the new authority, Skywalker searched for Padme. He and Yoda didn't talk about anything yet, but Yoda respected Anakin's wishes to come here. He only agreed to do so because every survivor from the temple was accounted for. They couldn't really go back either because the structure itself was nothing but debris. Anakin sped around the corridors before running into Padme's office. He was so hopeful that he could find her. Yoda slowly followed him in before closing the doors behind them, just in case any guardsmen came by. Skywalker looked at her dead bodyguards. Captain Typha was against the wall in the corner of the room, but no sign of Padme. Anakin was panicked, hoping to find a sign of her. Yoda from his position could see a leg sticking out from behind the desk, and as he spotted it, so did Skywalker, who ran around and broke down in tears. There she was, but she was gone, taken from him. Sidious was right. He never should have chosen the Jedi path. He got to her side and held her dead body, trying to do anything, as if checking a pulse would bring her back from the dead. Yoda came around the corner and saw what he feared. He looked down at the ground with a frown crawling across his face. Skywalker said that this was all your fault. Yoda looked up and watched Anakin unlatch his lightsaber from his belt. Yoda shook his head, telling Anakin not to do this. It wasn't true, and he knew it wasn't. Anakin became frustrated. He laid Padme down softly as he got to his feet and ignited his weapon. Yoda had a split second to react, as he ignited his weapon and defended a strike from Anakin. Skywalker told Yoda that he trusted him. He thought that choosing the Jedi would be right, but everyone was dead. Yoda leapt back as he defended each strike. Anakin spewed out more falsehoods as Yoda kept his guard up. He pushed Anakin back and held his ground. Young Skywalker looked down with a permanent scowl. Yoda told Anakin that the dark path wouldn't bring them back. Skywalker said it would have kept them safe as he lunged across the room and slammed his butt against Yoda's, who spun under the swing and spaced out. He tried giving Skywalker a chance to stop, but he wouldn't. He was getting more aggressive. Yoda didn't want to turn on him, but Skywalker wasn't giving him a choice. Anakin pressed harder, and then Yoda slid past him, as Anakin tripped and body-checked the wall. He looked back over at Yoda, who deignited his lightsaber. Anakin moved from the wall and rolled his shoulder, telling Yoda that this was... He saw Padme's dead body from the corner of his eye. His lightsaber dropped from his hands as he looked over and realized that Yoda was right. Darkness did this, not the light. Anakin fell to his knees, and tears slipped from his eyes. He apologized to Yoda, who came to his side and put his hand against his shoulder, reassuring him that they would be okay. Everything would be okay, and telling him that this was not his fault. This was not his burden to bear. Anakin was an emotional wreck, and Yoda told Skywalker that together, they'd bring harmony to not just the Force, but to his heart. Anakin was so confused. He didn't know where his loyalties lay anymore, Jedi or Sith. Did it matter? Both were responsible for this, and both caused this to happen. The two Jedi would spend another hour leaving the Senate building and then departing to Ossus. Sidious's plan to wipe out all the Jedi may have been a failure, but he crippled them. His initial plans were to use Order 66 and 134 to vilify the clones, Order 66 to turn against the Jedi, and 134 to turn against the Senate. With Order 42, he essentially placed Commander Fox in charge of everything as the interim chancellor. Fox, being the clone commander he gave the orders to, was of course the clone who relayed the orders to the entire galaxy. Sidious believed that in killing Padme he could turn Skywalker against Yoda. In this circumstance, either Yoda would die or Skywalker would escape, loathing the Jedi. He didn't believe there was a strong enough bond between Yoda and Anakin for the Grand Master to save him. The intention of making Fox the interim chancellor was so that Sidious could return and take control of the failing government that was to come. Palpatine assumed the Senate would crumble under Fox's leadership, but it didn't. What actually happened was the crippled Jedi leadership returned from Ossus to take the clones out of power. They almost waged a siege in the Senate, but instead, they found an order to cripple Palpatine's plans. It was a complete accident too, but with Executive Order 150, the Jedi were able to free the clones from their eternal hell and take control over the Senate. The whole point of this takeover was to end the Clone War and restore the government. Had the Jedi stayed in the shadows, Palpatine could have taken over, but they didn't stay in the shadows. Instead, they returned a semi-functional democracy to the power of the people, a people who resented the Jedi but hated Palpatine. As a result, the Jedi vanished from the front of the galaxy and returned to Ossus to rebuild their fallen order. Anakin and Yoda would continue to expand upon their relationship, and Palpatine redirected his efforts. There was one key order that Palpatine used to ensure his longevity. The Order of 111 was to capture and seizure of all Kaminoans, so he brought every single one of those cloners to his Sith homeworld so that they could begin working on his next plan. This was a combination of different ideas that Palpatine had been going through into the post-Clone War era, but this would be his only way to wipe out the Jedi and take control over the galaxy. He was very disappointed that Anakin didn't turn against the Jedi, and even more so frustrated that he couldn't use the failure of clone leadership as reason enough to return. One failure was enough to learn from. Sidious would return. 4 decades later on Ossus, inside the Grand Master's meditation chambers, he woke up from his sleep in a cold sweat. His eyes darted around the room and then back to the window, which was hidden behind some blinds. He used the Force to open the blinds so he could see the natural world outside. He fell back to his bed. Anakin felt chills roll down his spine. It was like he was hit with a wave of night terrors. The Elder Jedi Master got up and walked around his room, his mind thinking about the end of the fight, and how close it was to coming. He then considered, if everything was going so well, something had to be awry. Anakin sat down and stopped. He was overthinking everything. The night terror mixed with the stress of the fight was eating him up. As Grand Master, it was his burden to bear. He was the one that needed to make the difficult decisions. His eyes closed, and he pondered what he would do to make sure the Jedi Order did not fall victim to the forces of evil. Yes, Anakin Skywalker, Grand Master of the Jedi Order, was following in his final instructor's steps. Yoda had taught him much before his passing. The bond between former Grand Master and Chosen One was tight, all the way up to Yoda's final breaths. The Senate and the Republic were one. They were a strong body of government. General Grievous and any droid forces, gone. The Sith, still elusive, but known about. Skywalker's 2 students, Ahsoka Tano and Ezra Bridger, ran into one of them. The male Sith was killed. His student was not. Anakin believed Baylan was right. It was just a cycle, one in which the past was repeated, though neither Ezra or Ahsoka fell victim to an Elder Maul. His student Talon retreated into the grip of Sidious, the one who convinced Maul to serve him once more. The Sith used Morabond for the longest time before hiding in a place the Jedi would never find. Exegol was safe. The Kaminoans worked until their lives deteriorated into dust. The Sith Eternal picked up right where they left off, and Sidious had himself a couple of clones, ones that could be used against the Jedi. When his student returned, he was proud of her for surviving the Jedi. Maul was expendable, the future was not. While the Sith were preparing to wipe out the Jedi, Master Skywalker walked out to his order on Ossus. Jedi Archivist Obi-Wan Kenobi was beginning his first instruction of the day with Professor Hiang. It was a lovely class size, the biggest one seen since Skywalker was a student. The order had grown to 1,500 members in the last 40 years, and it was a strong order, though the council of this era was working dedicatedly to track and find the Sith. Maul was one accomplishment, but there was still more to go. Skywalker could sense Sidious, and the fact that he was having night terrors proved to him that the end of the fight between Jedi and Sith was upon them. Ahsoka and Ezra spoke to the Jedi Council about their attack against Maul. It wasn't incidental. Ever since Order 66, the Jedi went from hated to neutral to respected again. They were allowed back in the galaxy, and they actively helped those in need. This is where Ahsoka and Ezra came in. As the Grand Master's students, they were on a diplomatic mission to Raxus, one of the lead planets in the Republic. While they were there, they caught 2 Sith sabotaging the fuel reserves, ones that would have detonated an important diplomatic talk, one that would have likely severed the Outer Rim from the Republic itself had it been ignited. Ezra stopped to fix it while Ahsoka chased after the Sith. She held them off until Ezra got there, and they worked as a team to defeat Maul, before injuring Talon and scaring her off. They believed from this incident that the Sith were going to cause another galactic divide, this time between the Mid-Rim and the Outer Rim. Anakin shook his head. He leaned back and looked to his peers. Palpatine was too smart to do this. It was clearly a distraction. Though what remained a question was how they might find the Sith. Ezra expressed that there was a name referenced by the 2 of them, one saying something like Eziola, Exegol, or something like that. Master Kestis spoke up, saying that while he was on his many journeys, he and Seer found Sith texts referring to the ancient hideout of the Sith. It required something called a Wayfinder to locate it. Anakin remembered. There had been an expedition to find a Wayfinder, but they never got anywhere. Keller and Beck killed Ochia Bestoon, a Sith hunter who was trying to get a hold of a Wayfinder so that he could find Sidious. Anakin's 2 former students bowed before leaving the discussions as the council spoke about how they would like to approach this issue. They came to the decision that a new expedition would begin. Hopefully, they could find the location of the Sith. When the discussion ended, the council moved from their main location. Skywalker walked over to a sensing stone. It wasn't the same as a seeing stone on Tython. Rather, this was created on Tanalorr, a stone that could protect the Jedi Temple from natural attacks, or in other words, an attack of which the Sith bombed or used a storm against, whichever. Anakin leaned against the stone and looked out over the valley. It was beautiful here on Ossus. The Jedi Order had grown so much since relocating here. Anakin reflected on how Yoda may have handled this. The Grand Master and the Chosen One were the tightest duo after Order 66. Their work together gave way for a reborn order, but it was also through this bond that Anakin could heal from his grievances. Yoda understood, and he reflected with Skywalker. They worked on their attachments, how to let go, but also how to let in. Something the Jedi had forgotten to do. Let in their emotions. They are not negative. This Jedi Order was still very similar to the one of the Clone War, but there were many more emotions involved. They were watched over, but they weren't forbidden. The attachments that were focused on or watched over were possessive and selfish emotions. It was these emotions that caused the most falls to the dark side. But the Order, like Anakin, healed with time. That's what it took. There were individuals tempted to leave, and some of them did, but the majority of them remained and were taught how to let in and let go. It was like breathing, and eventually learning how to let in the feelings and let them go was a core of their order. In the following days, the council would be dispersed amongst the stars with squads of 4 Jedi Knights and Masters. Anakin was the only one who didn't go, but that wasn't intentional. He was taking a class of younglings to Ilum so they could gather their lightsaber crystals with the Professor and the Grand Master. It was nice to have a class of such size. The Order felt like it had returned. Also, yes, Anakin did consider leaving the Order for another romantic relationship, but he found all the connection, love, and emotion from those around him and from teaching again. The Order, after such trauma, really embraced each other. On Ilum, the students ran into the ice caverns to complete the ritual that had been repeated for centuries. Anakin and Huyang spoke with each other quietly, before Huyang returned to the ship. The cold was freezing his circuits. Anakin just thought to himself. He'd been having visions lately, and they were troubling. He believed he'd be forced to sacrifice himself, which he was fine with, to eradicate the Sith. Anakin wasn't worried about death. He accepted it was natural. He learned how to heal with it and be okay with it when it should come. The troubling side was the fact that the Sith had plagued his entire life. It was time that they were dealt with and removed from the galaxy. When the younglings came back out, he walked them to the shuttle and they entered, before leaving and returning to Ossus. In hyperspace, they were taught how to construct their lightsabers. It was a joy for Anakin. He helped them himself, but he also loved teaching them how to build their blades. When they returned to Ossus, they ran into Master Kenobi and showed him their lightsabers. The aging Jedi Archivist was very pleased, as he congratulated the class on their successes. Before Anakin could get ready to make his own mission, he was contacted. Keller and Beck discovered the secrets of the Sith. He was on Dathomir, on a completely unrelated mission, and he found trails of the Sith in the old home of the Dathomiri caves. Anakin asked what this meant, and Master Beck didn't know. He just told the Grey Master that the Sith were doing something with the people of Dathomir, but he had found a Sith Wayfinder, something he knew that the Jedi were looking for. In an effort to keep things grounded with the Order, Anakin made sure everyone knew what the Council was doing for 99% of their missions. It's the only reason Kelleran knew to call Anakin, aside from the fact that there were remnants of the Sith here. Anakin quickly took his personal starfighter with R2 and departed for the ancient witch homeworld. When he arrived, he could feel the swirling of darkness. Kelleran was looking through everything here. He had found some other clues that might be important, but what Master Skywalker saw was terrifying enough. The Wayfinder was left here because the Sith didn't need it. Maul didn't even mean to leave it here. It was just a mistake on his part, and Talon didn't know where he kept his Wayfinder. The Sith had coordinates so they could go to and from Exegol without a Wayfinder or having to share one with the other allies they had. It was just an easier way to conduct missions on behalf of Sidious. Kelleran showed Anakin dials full of blood, something that was kept under a painting of Duchess Satine. This screamed Darth Maul, and Anakin deduced that this was likely his lair. But why would he have a secret lair if he was working with Sidious? Kelleran hadn't had time to go through it, but there was a journal, one in which Maul highlighted his disagreements with the work of the Sith on Dathomir. He supported the dark side, but some things were going too far, even for him. Another entry showed that he feared that he was losing his grip over his student. Talon was highly influenced by the Dark Lord of the Sith. His last entry said that he feared Palpatine planned on replacing him again, and how he had his own plans for assassinating Palpatine. Kelleran looked at Anakin and asked what it could be that Maul was so afraid of. He shook his head, not knowing. It could be any number of things, but the Jedi had their way to Exegol, and they also knew the Sith were up to something terrible. The Jedi Council was called back to Ossus. Caloran and Anakin brought all their information home as well. When the Council assembled, Anakin informed them all that they had their pathway to the Sith homeworld. He wouldn't force anyone who wasn't ready to go, but only the most ready Jedi should join them on this mission. Skywalker told them all that he would lead them into the belly of the beast, asking who would follow him. Council Masters Cal Kestis, Balin Skull, Shak T, Kit Fisto, Revis Evander, Caleb Doom, Kirik and Phila, Theron Bar, and Gunji all stood up. While this mission wasn't limited to council members only, Ahsoka, Ezra, Seer, and Shin were accompanying them. Each of them were Jedi Masters by this point as well, though for a number of reasons some of them either opted to stay out of the council or were never offered a seat. Anakin asked these Jedi if they were sure that this is what they wanted to do, and not a single one of them hesitated. Skywalker understood and told them, for light and life, this mission was going forward. He took the Sith Wayfinder and walked first into the T6 Jedi shuttle. He plugged it in and R2 followed him in, tapped into the computer and whistled, ready to go. The Jedi all prepared themselves and lifted into the air. Obi-Wan stood by a number of young Jedi, all of which looking to the ship leave their system. One of the children asked the elder Jedi if they would come home, and Obi-Wan smiled, putting his hand on their shoulder and telling them that the Force would guide them. They were doing what needed to be done. The T6 shuttle eventually ripped out of hyperspace, following the coordinates of the Wayfinder. Skywalker sped the ship through the red honeycomb zone, whipping the ship from side to side as he sped past debris. The course was being charted as the Sith who found it did thousands of years before them. Skywalker eventually pulled out and exited in the Exegol's atmosphere, and told the other Jedi that they had arrived. He piloted the ship down to the surface of the planet, and they landed outside of a massive structure. Skywalker got up and looked at each of the Jedi. He was getting an idea of where each of them sat. Would they be alright? He could see confidence from their eyes as he passed them, and walked to the edge of the ship. Skywalker told R2 to wait with the ship, and the droid did, never having any anxiety with that specific phrase. The 13 Jedi followed their Grand Master out of the shuttle, and towards the towering temple of the Sith. Palpatine was in there. It was time to kill him. As they entered, they could sense the strength of the dark side. It was emanating out of every crevice and crawling across the very floor they walked. Many of them had visited relics of the Sith, in attempts to find them, so it wasn't like they never felt this before, but this was different. There was something truly evil about Exegol, and it was because this is where the Sith were. The Jedi continued forward, keeping their eyes peeled, looking for any signs of hostility, but nothing showed itself. They moved into a large crevice in the floor, and Skywalker led them onto a large lift. It carried them down even lower into the temple. Unlike temples belonging to the Jedi, this one went down, not up, and it kept on going. When they reached the bottom, they could feel the darkness growing. Anakin told them to be careful. They were close. He could feel Palpatine. His disgusting presence had been haunting him for decades, and finally, they could extinguish it. As they continued forward, they could see Kaminoans. Instead of standing tall, they were hunched over, enslaved for 40 years of work, all so that Palpatine could exact his revenge, and once the Jedi were gone, he could move on to his next stage of the plan. He realized over the years that his greatest enemy was the Jedi. They would pay. Upon seeing the Jedi, the Kaminoans ran to them, and as they did, a double-bladed red lightsaber ignited and was thrown across the chambers, cutting every last Kaminoan down. The Jedi stopped. 14 lightsabers ignited as Skywalker took point. From the shadows came a red Twi'lek, one who faced off against Ezra and Ahsoka before him. They recognized her, but as she stepped forward, she told the Jedi they were fools. From around the Jedi, 4 dozen lightsabers ignited. They were outnumbered and surrounded. Talon smiled as her master, Darth Sidious, walked up from behind her and told the Jedi that it was good they surrendered themselves here. Going to their home world would have been problematic if their best warriors were present. Now their order would fade into obscurity, and he would slaughter every last one of them on Ossus. Sidious lowered his hand, and in one motion, every single Sith lunged at the Jedi. They quickly moved to defend themselves. Luckily, these Sith acolytes were spread out across the chambers, some of which in areas where they couldn't defend themselves. Skywalker moved in front, not even thinking about Palpatine. They needed to stop these acolytes before going after the head Sith. The Jedi broke into formation, using each other like a square formation. They slowly moved together before spacing out. With this many Sith, Skywalker told them to break free. Similar to how the clones targeted Jedi during Order 66, the Sith did here, and luckily for the Jedi, they trained exactly for that. Cal, Reva, and Caleb moved out as they drew a group of Sith. Baylan, Gunji, and Seer slid themselves towards the lift they arrived on, as Shin, Ezra, and Shaak Ti broke off together. The next group of Jedi consisted of Farron, Ahsoka, and Fisto, who took on the largest grouping of Sith acolytes. Master Kashyyyk and Phyllis stayed by Anakin's back, and they fought side by side. Their blades matched the speed and ferocity of their opponents. Sidious was tied to Skywalker. He was the reason Anakin had his nightmares, so he knew how powerful Anakin had become. But what this connection didn't tell him was that Skywalker mastered every single lightsaber form. He moved in and out of his favorite forms before sliding into his first mastered form. Skywalker slowly moved from defense into attack, as he used all of his physical strength to dominate these warriors of the Sith. Though what became increasingly weird was how every single one of these acolytes were Zabraks, like Dathomiri Zabraks, just like Darth Maul and Savage. Anakin and Kashyyyk stayed together as the other squads of Jedi struggled. They were being overwhelmed. As Anakin and Kashyyyk cut a hole through the Sith flanks, he told the Jedi Master to break free, and Kashyyyk listened to Skywalker as he moved to assist the squad suffering the most, which was Baylan's squad. Anakin was left in the middle by himself. 3 acolytes charged him, and he masterfully sidestepped, before backhanding one of them, as he sliced one down the middle. Skywalker backed up, parrying a strike as he switched into Form 6, as he leapt over the last opponent, throwing his reverse grip lightsaber into the one he backhanded before dragging his blade across the ground and blinding the final Sith and striking him down too. Anakin looked over. He could see the Jedi struggling. Despite Baylan's squad struggling the most, all of the Jedi were in a position of peril. Anakin started to move towards them to help, but Talon dropped down in front of him, igniting her weapon and swiping upwards, almost catching Anakin in the jaw. He was wrong to turn his back on Sidious and Talon. The Jedi and Sith toiled. Anakin felt as Yoda once did. He was blinded by his compassion for his Jedi, the weight of the role of Grand Master keeping him from focusing on his fight with Talon. He snapped out of it, trusting that his Jedi would be alright, as Kashyyyk engaged with the Sith. Anakin defended himself, spinning away as Talon pushed him past Sidious. The Dark Lord of the Sith laughed. His voice echoed out in the chambers of the Sith as Skywalker was pushed into the lab. He stumbled back, dropping under a swing before using the Force to launch Talon across through a bacta tank and into a pillar. He looked over to Sidious with a scowl, asking him what he had done. Sidious smiled as he put his hands together, telling Skywalker that he cracked the code. In desperation, he made an alliance with the witches of Dathomir. Their kind may have been extinct, but Morgan Elsbeth was useful enough to him until she wasn't. Sidious walked towards Skywalker, telling him that they sampled blood from every Dathomiri Zabrak and every witch from the Singing Witch clan on Dathomir. Their blood and their DNA was extracted to make Force-sensitive clones. A twist on Sith and Dathomiri magic. Ironic, isn't it? Skywalker couldn't save his precious wife, but Sidious could create Force-sensitive clones. He turned his head in a mocking way, and before Anakin could attack, he was thrown from his feet. Skywalker rolled and looked over, seeing Talon and 3 Zabraks with their hands raised. It took a whole lot to move him from his feet. Anakin grabbed his blade and moved in. The Sith attacked him, and he did everything within his power to kill them. Sidious stood with pride as he watched the Jedi fall apart. First, Farron was killed, then it was Gunji, and following him it was Seer. Their numbers were dropping faster than they were killing Sith, and Skywalker could feel it. Every Jedi death was like a scar across his heart, but he couldn't lose focus. This fight was impossibly uphill. He stumbled before gaining his footing and using the Force to lift the 4 Sith from the ground. Without channeling the dark side, he ripped from them their ability to use the Force at all, before he launched them outwards, using their own energy against them. Talon and the other 3 were thrown into the sky and left to their own merits, a fate that'd be finished in their fall from height. Skywalker rolled his lightsaber in his hand as he raised it towards Sidious. The Dark Lord grinned, spinning himself forward with the ignition of twin crimson blades. Anakin blocked the first strike, and slammed his blade against Palpatine's. They locked eyes as Anakin towered over him, shoving him back. The Sith Lord bounced around Anakin, who perfectly countered each strike, then Skywalker moved into Form 7. He slowly mimicked each of Palpatine's moves, as he kept himself together, matching speed and strength. Across the chambers, Ahsoka's group and Ezra's group reunited, and they fended off the Sith together. During their fight, they watched the Elder Kit Fisto get slain, before Shaak Ti too fell. The Jedi were dropping in numbers, and the Sith continued coming. They needed to mount together, as Cal led his group back to them, and the Jedi grouped up as one. They were down to Kashyyyk, Cal, Baylan, Reva, Caleb, Ahsoka, Ezra, and Shin. They forced their way together, making sure to cover each other's backs, but the fight wasn't getting any easier. They still had dozens more Sith to get through, and their eldest members, aside from Kashyyyk, had fallen victim to the Sith. Skywalker was on his own, and they were too. They needed to help him out, and by doing that, they needed to help themselves. Ezra had an idea. He smiled with a wink, before using a burst of the Force to launch a couple of the Sith as he ran forward. He noticed that these Sith moved similarly to a beehive. When there was the most movement, they tracked it. This should give the Jedi a chance to single out their adversaries. Ezra moved forward, blocking a strike as he used his hand and shoved a Zabrak away from him. The Force was his ally. The other Jedi saw their opportunity and moved in, singling out their opponents who were now distracted by Ezra's quick thinking. Skywalker, on the other hand, locked blades with Palpatine, before wrapping his metallic hand around Palpatine's wrist, squeezing it as hard as he could before launching Sidious across the chambers and into a tank. Anakin walked forward, dragging his blade across the ground, and then Sidious launched lightning at the Jedi Grand Master. Anakin lifted one hand and looked Palpatine dead in the eyes as he took in all the evil energy and absorbed it. Palpatine crawled backwards as he watched Anakin close in. He tried everything he could do, but Anakin wasn't done. Similar as he had with the other Sith, he focused all of his energy. Now that he had a chance to do so, he could zone in on Palpatine without distractions. Using all of his strength, he ripped the ability to use the Force from Palpatine's grip, and then without even budging, he told Sidious that his Sith Empire would die with him. Skywalker lifted Palpatine up into the air effortlessly, and dropped him into a bacta tank. As a Jedi, he couldn't kill an unarmed man, but that didn't mean water couldn't. Sidious felt the cold, cooling water wash around him as his skin trembled, and Anakin simply closed the lid, taking a large boulder left behind from Talon slamming into a pillar and ever so lightly dropping on top of the bacta tank so he couldn't escape. Sidious flailed around hopelessly as Skywalker ran away, leaving Palpatine to a fate only right for someone as evil as him. When Anakin got to his Jedi, he ignited his blade once more and joined them in their fight. As he got there, Ezra was circling back around, and with one solid strike, Anakin blindsided 4 of the acolytes, before a student joined him and they cut down the remaining Sith trailing him. Once it was finished, the Jedi looked to each other. Their losses were numerous, but their resolve was balance. R2 would bring a number of caskets for the fallen Jedi, and they'd be able to be brought away from this terrible, terrible place. When the Jedi got back to their shuttle, they could hear screaming, as if the Sith Eternal were dying out, fading into non-existence. Just like their religion. They won. Skywalker turned back to see the temple. From what he could describe, it looked like it was crumbling in on itself. He lifted off, and they returned to their humble abode on Ossus. Of course, there would be a funeral for those who passed on, each of their bodies being burned and their lightsabers buried. It would be a celebration of life, because these Jedi made the ultimate sacrifice for the galaxy. Grand Master Skywalker would commemorate their lives with a speech, one that would last for generations. The nearly 100-year-old Grogu was in attendance. It would be his order one day, an order in which he would be the Grand Master of. But Skywalker knew it would be an order that belonged to all of them. His words cultivated the minds of the future generation of Jedi. The galaxy was safe, but it wouldn't forever be that way. It was up to them to fight for light and life, like those who died before them, like those who made the ultimate sacrifice. It would be their burden to ensure their memory never faded from existence. It'd be their mission to be Jedi true of heart and strong of character. It would be this Jedi Order that wouldn't fall silent on dusk, rather, the one that always brought the galaxy a new horizon. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all of our patrons: Benjamin Wells, M, Django Fett Clone, Nick 5098, INTJ Recluse, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tibbs, CC2024, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir Realm 1767, Darth Revan, Granddaddy Ban, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewu 670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Knox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny Naguin, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Galaxy 66, Man Studios, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, Fortis Legacy Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, The Man with the First Names, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. Smash that like button. Otherwise, let's talk about this story. When I went into this one, I wanted to play with the idea of the relationship between Anakin and Yoda, but I also wanted it to be a perfect mirror of Grandmaster Yoda and Grandmaster Skywalker. which is why when the 40-year time gap happens, it's literally the same text as the beginning of the video. I also wanted this video to have the tragedy and the tragic-like aspect of Revenge of the Sith, while also still having the peaceful resolve. And for the end, you know, obviously Anakin's full trained, but I also wanted it to be entertaining. I didn't want him to just go in there and be like, aha, I win because I have special powers. You know, that's kind of not fun. So I hope you all enjoyed. This was really fun to kind of play with these two different eras in one. But I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.